Welcome to Superior Health Wednesday. I'm joined as always by Jim LaJoy, Executive Director from Superior Health Foundation. How are you doing this week?
Good, good.
Good.
Thanks for asking.
Good to have you. And it's a busy time of year. We just started winter, but it's time to start thinking about spring and more
Yeah,
specifically uh, spring grant applications.
absolutely. And for the record, I started thinking about spring the first time I used my snowblower in the winter, but that's a whole nother story, right, Ben?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we opened up our spring grant applications on December 15th. We will be accepting those through January 17th. And, these applications are good for health centered nonprofit organizations all across the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So we're looking for all sorts of different types of projects, ranging from equipment projects to programming, and just working closely with those organizations to see what kind of ideas that they have in mind for the grant period.
And for people thinking about applying, they have these really good ideas. What sort of grant funding is available? What size of grants are these?
Well, we're looking at a total amount that we'll be awarding this year, about 175,000, which is the highest we've ever done for spring grants. We just recently upped our percentage a little bit through recommendations from our grants committee that went to our board. But in terms of grant applications, we tell people that the average grant is usually around $15,000 to $20,000. But that doesn't preclude the fact that we may have a grant that's $40,000, $50,000 that is really, really something special, and we'd like to fund that. Or it could be a smaller type equipment grant for $5,000, and we'd be open to that as well. So, it kind of runs the gamut of high and low, and we purposely left it that way because the needs of nonprofits vary quite a bit, all across the Upper Peninsula. But that average grant is somewhere between 15 and 20,000. And in the past, we typically award anywhere from 8 to 14 organizations with grants, and we're hoping to get a real good amount of applications in this year because we know the needs are out there.
And let's, if we could, talk for a minute about some of the success stories that you've had, organizations that you've worked with that have really benefited from these grants.
I think there's so many organizations that we have benefited. One that comes to mind is Big Brothers Big Sisters. We've supported them a number of times with programming to expand their programming, expand their needs and their services. Certainly, we've worked very closely with Great Lakes Recovery Centers on grants that address mental health as well as substance use across the Upper Peninsula. We've worked with the Caregiver Incentive Project here in Marquette, with their main goal and mission to provide, caregivers for elderly and those with disabilities. We have funded them a number of times. There's a number of different organizations that we have funded, and what's interesting is that each time that we put this out, we learn of a new organization or we get an application from an organization that we may not be familiar with. As we've talked about, the UP is a pretty vast area, and we try to get the messaging out as much as we possibly can to all areas in the UP. And sometimes there's organizations that we might not be aware of. And I think it's kind of exciting for us. It's exciting to look at an organization and look at a project that they may have, and usually when they get funded, it's not the last. It usually starts a long-term relationship with that organization.
Well, and I think this is a good time talking about getting some new ideas, some new folks involved with you to remind people how the application process works, what do they need to have, and how do they even start this process with you?
Well, it's actually pretty easy. All people have to do is go to our website, Spirit Health Foundation website at spirithealthfoundation.org. And right on the homepage, there's an icon to apply for a spring grant. And whoever is filling out the application will be asked to fill out their name and information that'll get them into the system. And then it's an online portal that they fill out. You know, they can work on it, come back to it, but it's essentially, you know, how much, what are you asking for? We need to attach a budget, at least 2 letters of recommendation from folks about the project, a narrative of the project and who it's going to impact. So, you know, it's not real lengthy. We've made it that way for a reason. And you know, it's not that complicated. It'll take a little bit of time to put into it, but we look for consistency though. We want to make sure that you have an accurate budget. We want to make sure that the project aligns with our mission, that it's health centered, it's improving the health and well-being of people across the UP, you know, and the narrative needs to really line up with what the project is asking for. And, you know, typically these are 1-year grants, but, you know, our committee is open to possibly a 2-year grant period, to have that money available over 2 years. So, you know, the options are there, and, you know, we encourage people that have any questions or concerns and they don't know exactly a particular part of the application, they can contact us and we'll be happy to help them.
And that's good, because some people, they've got a good idea, they have a good budget, or they might need help of, you know, who makes a good letter of recommendation? How do I go about getting that? So it's what you're looking for. But that's one of the things we've always talked about is having those conversations with you, because the idea is finding people that have ideas, making sure they're the right fit for the right kind of grant and at the right time. So if they have any of those questions, you and your folks are really good about helping people navigate that whole process.
Yeah, we are. We take great pride in that. And, you know, that's an important part of it because we don't want people spinning their wheels for unnecessary reasons. I mean, we want to give them the tools to submit a successful grant application. And, you know, when you're talking, you had just mentioned like letters of recommendation. One of the things that we frown upon are canned letters of recommendation. In other words, the same letter signed by different people. We do not like that whatsoever. We encourage people to do letters of recommendations from other folks who may have had a similar type project that can comment on it. That, you know, we had some funding and we did a really good job with this. And with the proper funding, you guys could too. So it's good to have those historical accounts of other folks that may have worked on a project that aligns with what they're trying to submit. So, you know, it's we run the whole gamut of types of grants that we receive. And I think the fun in all of it is sitting down and going through it because we always get new ideas, new approaches to things. And the other part to that, too, Ben, is we love collaboration. We love those grantees that collaborate with maybe another organization or look for co-funding, look for another funding source to help with it, and then bring us in to kind of help close out the project. So those are the things that really rise to the surface with our grants committee. And we put a lot of time and effort into decision making to make sure that we make the best decisions for the people of the UP.
And I think that's important. And we want to encourage people to come forward with those ideas because that's how we make progress together and how we keep moving things forward is having those conversations and not just, well, wouldn't it be nice if we had this or if someone started this? And just really connecting folks with the resources that you all have, because you work with people on the whole spectrum of all these different things. So if they've got a good idea, they could. There's a lot of potential there, and we could have more conversations about that, I'm sure, in the future.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'll give you an example of a conversation that I just had within the last week. We actually received a grant request from an organization it was an equipment grant request that, you know, we accept those monthly up to $2,500. But in looking at the request and what they were trying to get at, we thought this doesn't really fit into equipment. We could look at this as an equipment, but this is more of a spring grant because it was a much more robust program, and they were doing some pretty special things with that. So we just got on the phone with them and said, we encourage you to resubmit this as a spring grant request because this really has a lot more potential than just, the equipment dollars. So that's the route that they're taking, and we think that will be one of the first ones that we get in and take a look at.
That's really exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So in relation to this, our conversation today about the spring grants, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that we want to make sure to include in our conversation?
No, I don't think so, Ben. Other than the fact that, we can't touch upon this enough that if you have an idea, if someone out there has an idea, they're not sure about whether to submit it or not, pick up the phone, call us. Call the foundation, 225-6914. We're happy to talk to you. We'll give you some insight, and maybe it might not be a fit for a spring grant. Maybe it's more designed for a pilot project grant or another type of grant. But we're here to help. We're here to be those resources. There's myself and Laura Jarvie in our office who can help and provide that direction to make sure that they have all the necessary information that they need to make a good decision going forward.
Well, you're doing good work. Hopefully our conversation helps connect people to those resources, and we'll make sure to have the links directly to your site at the bottom of our conversation here. So thank you for sharing everything with us. Unless there's anything else, we'll see you next time.
Okay, thanks so much, Ben.